le vélo, pas de boulot.
Bonjour. Can you say festival?
Festival
Du Voyageur.
Voyageur.
Historically, the term voyageur meant a young fellow who did the labor of paddling a canoe. And there were big canoes, they're almost as big as his bus.
I'm excited, man.
You're in Canada.
I am in Canada. It's a bit chilly, but nothing that we're not used to.
Yes,
It's gonna be awesome.
It's a little chilly outside, but that doesn't matter right now.
Most definitely.
Gotta get some food.
Get some food, get some drinks.
Canada is very different experience than some other countries, like our own country, the United States. Canada really says, you are a distinct group, you have distinct qualities, we don't want you to lose them. Stay in touch with your people, with those things that are important to you, and you will add to the country.
It's important to have a rich culture, right? It's important to know that you come from someplace and have a sense of belonging. But if it's a rich culture and it's a confident culture, it will attract other people. Well, we see a little bit of it here at the Festival du Voyageur. I mean, most of the people here aren't francophones. I mean, there's a lot of francophones, a lot of Métis. But there's a lot of people who are neither Métis or francophone. They're here and they're enjoying that culture, right? So if you're confident, you have rich culture, you'll be outward looking and you'll bring people in. And that's much more interesting. Here in Western Canada, for example, I think this, in all modesty, is where we will rethink what a minority francophone community can be in the 21st century, because here in Canada we've had, for a generation and a half, we have immersion schools producing French-speaking Anglophones, young people, well-educated people who speak French. Let's bring them in. We have a whole lot of francophones who are arriving from other continents, from Africa and from around the world. Bring them in.
On les remercie avec un grand applaudissement.
I'm born in France. I got here 3 years ago from France. Before coming in UND, I was in Chicago. So in France, we spoke French and only French. I learned a little bit English. I'm also from Africa and Caribbean, so when I go to Africa to see my grandparents and cousins, we speak French, but they have a little accent. And when I go to Caribbean, the French is actually different. They have a fake accent, and the French I speak is, we call it Creole sometimes. And the Creole, I could say something, ça va mon frère? It's like, how are you, my brother? And in French will be ça va mon frère, which is different.
L'histoire est riche et on la sent. Ben, ici, par exemple, on la sent, l'histoire. Il y a des siècles d'histoire ici. Or, francophones were continental people, right? From day one, as soon as they stepped foot on the continent, they went off into the bush and they interacted with the First Nations, and that's why we were able to come here, right? We had a relationship with First Nations. There was no border, right? Down to Pembina, they're all down through Minnesota and what we now call North and South Dakota and Montana, right? But I know, as I'm, talking with Virgile, I mean, we know there's all kinds of people of French-Canadian origin who are all throughout North Dakota and the northern states. And I'd be very interested, actually, in reestablishing a relationship. I think we all be stronger for it, right?
We've got a wonderful colleague with Professor Page, and they're establishing some wonderful programs. Timothée. They're establishing wonderful programs to help students who'd be interested in international topics to get a chance to experience international culture.
Ce n'est pas la première fois pour moi de venir au Festival du Voyageur. Not the first time for me to come to the Festival du Voyageur. Je viens tous les années. I come every year, and it's just a wonderful place to meet people from the region who share that love of language and culture.
What are you wearing here?
Ça c'est une chemise en bison, un manteau en bison. faite par mon ami Virgile Benoit. So made by Virgil Benoit, a French professor at the University of North Dakota. Il l'a fait faire en 1987. He made it in 1987. C'est pour moi, I've convinced him that it's something that I very greatly appreciate. Avec un bison total, a full bison. It's wearing a full bison on your back, a full pelt of a buffalo. And these were worn many years ago by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and the police of Winnipeg to keep them warm in minus 40, minus 50 degree weather. I'm wearing only a t-shirt under here, so but I'm burning up, but it breathes so well that it's not uncomfortable to be this warm. It's so much better than any synthetic that you can think of. It's a piece of history. It's an extremely valuable object, impossible to find anymore. It's really a museum piece that it's so rare to see, and to be able to wear it at an event like this where furs are treasured and where people appreciate the history of fur and the fur trade. So part of this culture treasures Louis Riel. So if you look over there, there's a portrait of Louis Riel, who is the leader of the Métis people in Manitoba. He's a martyr. He was killed by the Canadian government, and he represents the spirit of artists and the spirit of Native peoples and La Francophonie, French-Canadian, in Manitoba, in the region.
Yeah. Tonight we will be revealing the new family.
Tonight.
At the Cultural Center.
That's tonight at the Cultural Center.
For the next 2 years.
Yeah.
For the next 2 years.
Okay.
In other words, people are going to know who they are for the whole summer because they go down south as well quite a few times during the year.
They have a whole year to get their clothes ready.
Yeah, yeah, that's about it.
No, they will be going to the Aquatano and St. Paul's Festival.
St. Paul's Winter Carnival. La Crosse, Wisconsin.
Yeah,
it's all part of it.
Yeah.
So you're proud to be the official family?
Absolutely.
Well, we were.
It's an
we used
honor.
to be.
Yeah,
We're has-beens.
We're has-beens. Big time has-beens.
I took French when I was in middle school, and I didn't really pay attention. We're scared, and we don't really have to think. Here we have to think. There's different ways of driving. There's different ways of pretty much everything, and you have to think, and that scares people that are not comfortable living outside the norm.
On the drive into Winnipeg, it was pretty apparent right away that they were so accepting of every culture that lives here. In America, it's always, in recent times, shut off the borders, build a wall. This is our land. And here, it's accepting. Like when we cross the border, the guy asked us, like, what are you guys doing? Going to the Village of Voyageurs? Like, oh, you gotta go check out, you gotta get some poutine, you gotta get a beer. Like, it's gonna be great, you're gonna love it. I was like, is it your first time in Canada? I was like, yeah. I was like, oh, great. And I know that when we go back, it's gonna be like, where were you at? It's just like that front.
By the university, there's a statue of Louis Riel. It's a statue that was extremely controversial about a man who was tremendously tortured mentally by the loss and diminution of the potential of the Métis people. He really wanted people to have democracy, and he wanted the Métis people to have a place in the Canadian Parliament. And gradually, they lost their lands, they lost their power. They attacked him for being insane, and Lord knows he might have become insane for all the pressures on him.
To the memory of Louis Riel, born in St. Boniface, October 22, 1844, head of the provincial government 1869 to 1870, champion of the rights of Western Canada. I want to know more.
That's an awesome view. Look at this.
That's why St. Boniface can exist, because it gets subsidized by an understanding across the board that there should be diversity, and it's a good thing. That's what their decision is.
In my perspective, I knew that the people are not French because for me they're Canadian who speak their own languages, and the perspective is different, and the way we talk is also different, and everything it's another country, so it's different.
Well, people are just people, and that's what I wish people would realize, is that you are just people and you're all trying to survive, and borders just make everything more complicated and more cut off and more separate.
It's unfortunate. You draw a border and all of a sudden it creates mental barriers. We're a continental people. We're not just Canadian people, we're continental people. Canada's an artificial creation, right? And so the first thing you say, I don't accept borders, and I don't accept limitations.
You may say it fragments a country, Well, you've got a good argument there if you want to debate that. And maybe someday we should debate it between the students who have studied Canada and those who haven't. This notion of diversity and non-diversity. And then you have to be serious and consider the advantages and disadvantages. So we can just have wonderful debates. And in the meantime, we've added value to our lives.